So let me welcome all. And this session is a panel discussion. This panel discussion would be speaking about fostering startup ecosystem for innovations in medical device sector. So let me welcome all the panel members. We have everybody's been introduced, but let me welcome officially Dr. Prashant Warke, Dr. Anand Krishnan, and Dr. Firoza Mustafa. Each of them represents a different sector and they come with rich and heavy background, which may help this discussion. So Dr. Prashant himself wears multiple hats. One of them, he himself was a plastic surgeon and now turned into an entrepreneur. For the last 5 years, he has been running a startup successfully. So he's walked all the valleys of death, which are required from an idea to actually making a commercial product. We have Mr. Anand Krishnan, and who is representing MediValley, which is an incubation center at AMTZ, one of those star parks, medical device parks in the country. So he comes with that background where ecosystem is created for conversion of prototypes into products. So, or scaling up products, that is what is the background. And Mr. Firoz Mustafa comes from CCAM, which is really interesting, which has the ecosystem for startups or innovators to convert the devices, especially microfluidics is one of the strong areas, but other medical device healthcare startups which are there. So I'm really happy to be sharing this podium. I'm Dr. Rupesh Gyar. I'm the Senior Executive Officer of BETIC, which is a medical device innovation center at IIT Bombay. So let me quickly open up the floor and take a quick round of views about the topic itself from each of the panel members. Let me start with Dr. Prashant. Your quick views, and then maybe I'll ask some specific questions, or let's see how the discussion goes. Dr. Prashant, your views on the current ecosystem, the fostering part which is happening to these startups.
Yeah, so I think a little differently from the others, I would like to share failures. Most of the panelists, they always talk about success. I have been in this from 2015. I was a practicing plastic surgeon treating over 600 burns every year. And we have gone into making RT-PCR kits to measure systemic sepsis and also in detecting fungal septicemia. So my failure actually is that I did not know to choose the right incubator for the services that they provided. So going to an incubator and then finding out that the services that I need are not available with that incubator had me to go and shift myself to the second incubator, which again had opportunity in that I could apply for funding, because most of the central government schemes do mention that you have to be incorporated in an incubator. And we don't know actually which is the correct incubator. So if there could be some kind of a guidance as to which is the right incubator for a startup, I think that will help avoid, for me personally, is a loss of 3 years being in the wrong space, not having the right kind of support from the incubator where I was. So I think from my failure, I learned that other startup companies should actually be given a chance to find out which is the right incubator they could sit in, and not just take anybody into an incubator.
Fantastic. I think this will help, and probably all the people who are listening, the budding entrepreneurs, innovators, I'll come back to you with a question. What is a good incubator? How do you choose a good incubator? I'll come back with that. What should be the points these startup should look into, innovators should look into when they choose actually? What are the points? I'll come back to you on that. But let me come to now Mr. Firoz, Dr. Firoz. What are your general views on the topic? How is the current ecosystem?
Thanks, Dr. Rupesh. So the current ecosystem, especially after the advent of COVID, there is now actually an interest from the government and funding agencies side, where they realize that medical technology devices are of more and more importance. And there has been interest in developing the ecosystem in the country and not just individual products. Like there has been this push for developing indigenous diagnostic devices, which have been gotten a large push during this whole COVID era. And we are also seeing that there is more money which is being pumped into developing of medical technology devices. But yes, Dr. Prashant is very right that you should choose the right incubator, because no incubator can have all the kind of different requirements that you will need. So before you choose an incubator, you need to talk to them to see what are the things that they can offer. Because when someone reaches out to us as an incubator saying, we want to develop this project, the first question we will ask is, what are the different things that you will require? So that's a very important question that needs to be addressed by any startup.
Fantastic. No, really. So that is again one more angle, which then I will come back to you with the question. When an incubator chooses startups, what are the points they should look at, and what should help other incubation centers? Because I'm sure the audience has not just startups, but incubation managers or people who are handling incubation programs. So what should they look into? But let me also come to Dr. Anand Krishnan. Now that you sit in those Medi Valley, which actually has so many MSMEs coming to production stage, scale up stage. So what do you think is the current ecosystem? Are there any inputs which are coming from government? Are there programs which are happening? What is your view about the total topic?
Yes. I just with what Dr. Prashant said, and also what Mr. Dr. Feroze said, just trying to link both. There is basically we are. I don't say we are successful now. We learned our lessons. Okay, and exactly what Dr. Prashant said. There is he said what are the failures. We had a bunch of can do better things that we picked up, and that's what we're doing now. And if I summarize that, it's like having an end-to-end solution for a startup.
Right.
Okay. That is more important. It's not like a startup comes with an idea, and then we support them. We do some mentorship, technical mentorship. And and then they build the prototype, open the gate, ask them to explore the world, and they don't need certificates at the end of the product development. The best certificate you can give them is market. Show them, the moment your product is there, you have orders ready, waiting. So that is what I feel end to end, and this is what we managed to create now. At our system, at our ecosystem. So having an end-to-end, and also not, everyone needs assurance. Assurance in terms of their IP protection. There they need some security so that they feel this area is safe to work. This ecosystem is safe. Secondly, certifications, regulation support. We should have market intelligence study clear, and we should have the health technology assessment system where they can recommend all these to the policymakers in the government. So there's quite a few things I can add. Probably I will cover in the next question. Thank you.
Definitely. Really good to hear all of your views. Let me also add my perspective on being in this ecosystem. So we found out that there were gaps. A lot of people, creative minds had ideas, but as Professor Ravi from IIT Bombay said, there were 4 valleys out there. Idea to proof of concept to prototype to product, and product to scaled up actual business. And these were 4 major valleys of death. A lot of people were able to cover the idea to proof of concept with their bootstrap money, or basic proof of concept to prototype with laboratories or academic setting. But there was a major challenge between this prototype to product, which is a functional device tested, especially in medical devices, as per regulatory assurances, getting the certification, getting the quality aspects. That was a major gap because there was investment required. And maybe I'll come back to Dr. Feroze on that. What are the avenues? How do you raise funding? How do you have good teammates to do that? And of course, the part where scaling it up, that is another challenge. You can build a product, but how do you build a good, successful business, a scalable business? So that is a gap. There are government schemes, which I'll just add on that there are government policies, income tax relaxations, which have been offered. 4,000 plus startups which have benefit from this. There is about 1,000 crore rupees worth corpus fund, which is distributed through various grants and funds. So there is a systemic push also we are seeing. There is some incentivization for people taking up startups is coming up. Even closing a startup in case you fail, even government has tried to think about it, and closing a startup also has become easier if it's a private limited company. Within 90 days, you can do that with just debt payment. So there are good points as an ecosystem it is trying to create. The incubation centers which are there now fostered throughout the country to help these innovators. That is something again CCamp is an example, Medivalley is there, Sign from IIT Bombay, Venture Center in Pune. These are some of these good examples where young innovators can go and seek help, mentorship, and ecosystem benefit that they can take from there. And agree with Dr. Prashant that I think sometime back this was not there. And there was a learning process, there was a learning curve which is happening, and even both sides are learning. In fact, both sides are learning on that. So let me now ask a specific question, Dr. Prashant. In case you are there, what do you think if there is a creative person, startup person, innovator, what are the points they should look when they choose a incubation center? What are the typical points they should focus on? You're on mute, Dr. Prashant, in case. While he joins, then maybe I can come back to Dr. Anant. What do you think are the points an incubation center should look at when they come back and choose a startup? What are the points? You can maybe throw light on that. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So the question is, as an incubator, what do I look for when a startup approaches with an idea? Yeah. So first things first, the brainchild of this innovation is going to be this innovators. The startup, the only thing that's going to stay from the beginning to the end is their idea. And my role is really to make that concept to become, there is a conception happen. I want to make sure that baby gets delivered nicely. This is my job. Okay. So if so all I would require from them, how strong are they in their subjects? Okay. And how much they know, and are there areas of are there areas where they need to develop their skills? Are they, even if they are aware of it, that is something I really look for. I don't look at the business case. I don't look at their project plan right away. I just have, first thing I really look for is like how much they are ingrained with the subject, the amount of granularity they have on their subject. So that's one. So basically, what is the scope of their work? What is the purpose of their work? Okay. Basically, why are they doing this work? And second thing is, what are their success criteria or the end product technical specification?
Okay.
So first one is why, what is the purpose? Second is what, and the what need to be very specific. Oxygen concentrators you're doing. I would like to get an oxygen concentrator with a purity of 93 plus or minus 3%. That accuracy, that clarity need to be there. The end product specification. Okay, and now the plus or minus can have 10%, 7%. At this point, it doesn't matter. But them being aware with the subject, that is important for me. And next is who's who in the team. I just want to know if there are 5 different work packages: electromechanical, optical, IT, and who is taking care of which spectrum. And so where I'm trying to understand where is the gap and where I can fill a mentor. And is this something they have to source it themselves, or should I be providing? That's something I will look for. And again, there next comes the most common ones, the deliverables and milestones, what they set among themselves. And most interestingly, I will look for the project risk and the technical risk. Okay. So sometimes if I want to come up and say, I want to make another iPhone, they may be able to technically capable of doing it, but there's a project risk because there is already an iPhone. You don't need to make one. So is the business risk is there, and again the technical risk. If you run it over 1 hour, the phone switches off. So that sort of technical risk they should be aware. And the last thing is the most I would say discomforting thing for them is their working capital. Do they have any working capital? How much of capex they need support from, and how much working capital they have? So I would basically come into 6 points. I'll just quickly point out scope and purpose. What is the success criteria, and what is the team distribution, and the skill set, and what are the deliverables, and what are the technical and project risks, and lastly the capital, how much they have, and where are they planning to invest. So there are startups who came with with almost not much with us, but we still support them. but it's important they are aware of what they are bringing in. That's what it is. Thank you.
I think that's a very, very strong point and very well put, especially the point of risk, which most innovators are always considering that my device has risk or my device does not have risk. And they're aware about the device risk, but not the business risk. I think that is something which is very critical and important because not every device means a good business case. And to make it a business case, what is required? That's a very good point, and really agree with all of those. Let me come back to Dr. Prashant if you are there. Can you unmute?
Yeah, sure.
So what would be, so this is from the incubator side, but let me also understand from the startup side. What do you think is points that these young guys, young startups should look at when they choose an incubation center? What are the points do you think?
So from again, I would like to share the personal failures. So in the first phase, the failure was that I chose the incubator just because it mentioned that for being eligible to get Government of India funds, which I think Feroz mentioned. In an online submission, it mentions you are supposed to mention an incubator. So we just chose which was nearby. That's a wrong mistake. Second is the service that that incubator provides as regards to the product. So I chose an incubator which had a lot of supportive labs, but refused to give access to the labs. Was of no use. It was not for the money, which I think Dr. Anand mentioned that their incubator gives financial support. So I made the second mistake, Anand, that I went to the next incubator after removing all this from there and went there for financial support just because there was the advertisement for the Nidhi Praya support. But that incubator does not offer any technological support, no laboratory, no certification support. It just gives you an opportunity to apply for Nidhi Prayas. Once you get that and go through that, then it tells you that, yes, you can be eligible for further funding, which is very good. So you're eligible for the next round as and when those funds come into that incubator. So I think it is the decision of the startup collectively as a team to know what it wants, whether it is looking for the financial support, like he mentioned, or whether it's looking for the technical support. In addition to these, I would say what I failed to get is mentorship from the first incubator, failed to give me any mentorship. Most of these behave typically with the government employees, and there was a small bit of a hitch in that. Now I think like C-Camp, etc., very, very professional, and you can get multi-talented support. The third thing I would, the last point I would like from the incubators is to tell how a person or a startup like mine could explore getting a co-founder, which is very difficult. How can you get a co-founder from if I come into a system like that? These, I think, Dr. Rupesh, are what I would like to share.
No, these are really valid, and these are valid points because they come from first-hand experience. These are something which valuable startup or co-founders.
No, which is what Dr. Anand asked. I want to look at the team. Now, my team requires 3 skills in an RT-PCR, but I have only 2 skills. So, right. Dr. Anand, when he evaluates me, he says your team is not good.
Fair enough. I think all your points again are valid there. That you need that the part where knowing what you want is also as important as doing what you're doing. That importance of understanding is very critical. Let me come to Dr. Feroz. That now that if you heard 2 sides of the story where the incubation center is looking at certain things, and I'm sure incubation centers also have startups which after choosing also did not work out and they improvise on their selection criteria or find out what were the gaps. And there were startups which did not work out because maybe the incubation center was not able to help. So in that perspective, let me hear your views.
So I mean, as an incubation center, we are not looking for 100% success rate because, I mean, a startup is by definition something that you are taking a leap of faith with. But we do try to make sure that the fundamentals are strong. And at least for C-Camp, what we do is we have a wide range of financial support. I mean, not from C-Camp per se, but through the government funding. There is also venture funding which come in. Anywhere from ideation all the way till the going to the market stage. And we also have a strong mentorship program where we bring in not us, but people from experts from the market who have been in the industry for a long time. So they know what the market is looking for, what is the aspects of the device or product that the person should be focusing on, etc. We realized very early on that we ourselves cannot provide all possible expertise. And we are trying to plug the gap to give as much expertise as possible through CCAM. But where it is not possible, we bring in external expertise to help us out. We are adding services as we speak as much as possible. Initially, CCAM started out as providing access to the technology platforms which were already available in the research institutes. And now we are slowly adding more things like the new rapid prototyping facility, the technology transfer office, etc., so that things can be. And of course, we are always open to work with other incubators when we don't have any specific capabilities, or you want to use the other incubator because you have started with them, you prefer, you have quantified and made sure that your equipment works best when you are using another incubator's facilities. Yes, we are more than open to that. We have also now tied up with ISO certification and ICMET certification consultants so that our startups can access those as well, which is, of course, more and more important. And usually what we see is that when people start at the very beginning, they're not thinking of these certifications. And then after they get it to a certain level, they realize suddenly that these certifications need to be done. And sometimes it gets to be a bit complex. Of course, someone like AMTZ, they would build from the ground up with ISO certification or ICMET certification. But for us, for a lot of our startups, these are technocrats who are getting into the startup ecosystem. So these are things which we find that they tend to miss. So our focus is on trying to make sure that they have a more holistic support. Even if we ourselves, the staff of CCAM, are not able to provide, we try to bring in external experts. So that's the thing. And when it comes to looking at what startups we support, very frankly, as long as we feel that it is feasible, we try to support them as far as possible. There are times when we have had to go back to a startup and say that the idea that they have won't work because of technical reasons. As long as it's not a technical reason, if it is a business reason, we put them in contact with the business mentors, and then it's up to them to take the call on whether it will work or if it won't work. We usually don't take that call for them. So that's how we try.
So this is really good to hear, because now I can see that I'm glad that Dr. Prashant was there, that there were some gaps which were there. There was some experience which they have experienced of the gaps between having facilities or choosing a right incubation center which has the focus area or the technical strength, capability also. So I think these are some of the good points which startups should look at. And there are now, I'm glad to see that there are at least incubation centers who are able to think and offer also these. So they are scrutinizing their teammates, their startup, which they are taking up. They're also trying to understand the gaps there and trying to fulfill not just by themselves, but getting experts from outside. So this is good. There's one experience from our side. So Biomedical Engineering Technology Incubation Center, BETIC. We identified that ISO 13485, which is necessary for medical devices, we were probably the only academic lab which got ISO 13485, which was unheard of academic centers doing that. But we identified that's very important for developing medical devices. If you want devices to be of international standards, you need to follow those standards. So all the design and development also activities for all those innovators, not just tinkering, not just early prototypes, everything done as per the standard, risk assessment, risk management, essential principles of safety design. These were some of these gaps which they found out later and after the product was developed. And then regulatory aspects become difficult, clinical studies became difficult because this was not addressed earlier. So that systematic approach of we have a process called define, develop, deliver, deploy, a 4D process which we came out. That probably helped these innovators to transfer their ideas into product much faster, was our experience. And that's something which was a challenge. But I think time-wise, probably we are just about hitting the mark. Or do we have time to take one or two more questions? Maybe I think we'll try to take one more. So let me understand the part of IP, Dr. Firoz. There are some of the government initiatives for novelty and patent, because these all are new ideas. And how is that looked upon through incubation centers or government perspective?
So right now, at the moment, there is some support for IP. So there are ways by which you can ask for funding for registering your IP. Like for example, the Biotech Ignition Grant has a separate funding section for getting your PCT registered or even your full IP registered. So apart from that, there is also other funding which is accessible, which at least to me as not a purely IP person, it's a bit more complicated. But what I would suggest is that BIRAC, for example, has set up a series of technology transfer offices all over India. One of them is in CCAM. And you can ask them as to what would be the typical cost and how it can be funded. I mean, I know that there is some earmarked funds which BIRAC itself can provide, but it may not cover the whole cost. So it can be used to at least offset some of the costs.
Nice. So there is another question to Dr. Anand. So are there any government policies or schemes or programs through which, let's say, procurement from the startups, which can be beneficial? Have you heard, or maybe any of you can answer? So once you develop a product, is the system also trying to help and foster this kind of acceptance of these novel products?
So you're asking about having a global procurement for the startups, and is there any?
Yeah, something like that. Yes. Are there state governments which are accepting this, preferring local purchasement? Is there some initiatives? Because I've heard that there are some government programs through which.
I mean, I don't know the initiative as such, but I'll tell you how how the system works within my campus. We say when there is a demand of oxygen concentrators, and we have about 7 partners who work together to make it happen. But although the designs may be different, the ingredients may be slightly different, the proportion may be different, almost the raw material is the same. So what we did is we have our own global procurement chain within the campus. And of course, this is, which is already, we have this Barman and Lorry, who are one of the government agencies who does the customs clearance for us. So there is support. I just don't know the exact scheme message. I can find it for you.
Sure.
But we made everything global, really, yeah.
Right. Dr. Firoz, are you aware of some initiatives where governments have preferred and?
So there are a few state government support which come and go once in a while. So there is no consistent support at the moment. But again, one of the important things I would suggest is that reach out to the nearest incubator, especially one of the more established ones, to ask what are the supports available and what are the funding opportunities available. Because this is a very dynamically changing system, and month by month things change quite a lot, and they will also be able to help you based on what technology readiness level you are. I mean, CCAM, for example, has something like monthly sessions where the different funding opportunities and the supports available and the procurement opportunities are discussed. So my suggestion there would be to reach out. So the other good thing is that the incubators also know that your particular product is available to take out. So they can showcase it when the state government or even the venture funding reaches out to them for that.
Sure. Let me also... Yeah, please go ahead.
I don't want to, it doesn't answer your question direct, the procurement, but there are schemes, government schemes, which exempts the taxes. For example, DSIR, Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIRO, you might have heard, right? Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, CSIRO, where if you're importing goods from China, instead of paying 25% plus 18% GST, you only input duty is waived, and and you also GST is waived to just 5%. So there are schemes like that, but procurement, as Dr. Feroze said, they're just seasonal ones.
Right. There is one which maybe there's an input which we have seen. So there are some clauses which are required for procurement, government procurement related, that the company has to be established for 5 years, your turnover has to be something. These were some of the norms which used to come usually in the RFPs. However, if you have a MSME certificate or DSIR certification registered with that, there are some norms which have been actually subsidized for startups. And that helps. That is also what we have seen in some cases where it is a relaxation that you don't have to be in existence for 5 years. You don't have to have existence with a turnover of certain high, so that only MNCs can benefit. Even startups can compete with respect to the technical specifications. We've also seen some pilot programs which state governments have started with startups to implement at small sites. And then if the program is valid, and then those recommendations are taken for larger scale procurement. So that is something also we are trying to see. As in, there was a Gujarat government initiative which we saw, where they adapted a startup's product, tried it out at their pilot primary healthcare centers, and then now that has been recommended. There was Kavach program which was there by RAC, where they funded the startups which develop devices in India, and then placed an order on the startup to nationwide implementation also. So there was some systemic development which have happened also. So let me also, so we're touching different points. So are there any regulatory supports which are coming in, that because medical devices and the regulatory world go hand in hand, those were challenges till 2017, 2018. So are there any initiatives, awareness programs? Are those pathways now streamlined, is what I would put up as a question for medical device startups?
So we do, so we do have regulatory workshops conducted every now and then. Apart from that, we also have, we're starting to have mentorship programs where with, the consultants coming in from the regulatory field to discuss. And regulatory aspects are something which is again covered even in the normal mentorship program. And following Betik's footsteps, we are getting ISO 13485 and ICMED 13485 certification for the CCAMP rapid prototyping facility as well, to help with getting the devices to market faster. And of course, we are always open to questions. If someone has a specific requirement and they don't know where to go to, we are more than happy to answer the question. The answer may not be us all the time, but at least we'll be able to say where and who to reach out to get the specific data.
Great. Dr. Anand, would you have any inputs on this regulatory? I think you have a regulatory cell in AMTZ itself, right?
Yes, AMTZ, and that too, its importance came to light just last month. From 1st of October, it was illegal to sell medical devices, without voluntary registration. So this information is not known to startups or partners themselves, because it's not their cup of tea. It's not their domain. So having a regulatory cell, having an in-house experts in regulatory is mandatory, I would say. Otherwise, even a once-a-week consultant who comes on a Friday evening, 2 to 5, and stay in the campus and give regular updates to the startups, that's another approach. Having an ecosystem, hiring a consultant 4 times a month, and sharing this important information is must. But scheme wise, I'm not the best person.
No, you're right. But so there is CDSCO, which is our central body equivalent of FDA, let's say, which is our central body for regulatory approvals, who does hand out licenses for manufacturing. Fortunately, 2018 onward, there is a medical device rule now, which has been published, which helps. It's a very systematic approach. All the ambiguities, whether device is regulated, not regulated, where do we apply? There is an online portal now which is opened up. Companies can register there, fill their forms. So that has become slightly easier now. There is a defined timeline in which they're supposed to respond. The set of documents is there. The classification of devices as per the risk is according to the global task force. So there was a global harmonization task force which implemented that, whether it is US, UK, Europe, what is the classification, how devices are regulated. Even in India now, whatever is followed globally has been implemented. So these are some systemic development for the ecosystem fostering of these startups to bring their devices to market much earlier and in the right way, with all the risks taken care, quality taken care. I think these are good points. I think I'm sure most of our audience right now would also like to hear, are there any major funding fostering or help or support which happens from government side or ecosystem, not just government? There could be different sources, avenues for the ecosystem, VCs, government, NGOs, grant challenges. So these are some of these financial support. So are there any schemes or are there any initiatives which help these startups? If you may answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Anand. You can start.
No, we have opened up quite a few innovation challenges. Other than that, I can give you an overview what sort of support we give to any innovator who comes in medical devices. So apart from all this interview criteria, as I said, it's not even a criteria. It's just something we look for. The awareness is what we're looking for. And at times we have a lot of give and take. We just onboard them. And first thing we will do is we'll sit with them, ensure their project plan is clean, neat, and they have some sort of horizon for the next 3 months. And first things we'll support up to 5 prototypes. The component building, and the tools and instrumentation, everything will procure for them. And they have access to the entire ecosystem. We have world-class 3D printing facility, injection molding, gamma irradiation. Again, we have compliance facility, everything we give access to. So in a way, on average, we go up to, there is no set limit. Depending on the innovation, average, we go up to 10 lakhs per innovator. But all we look for, 2 things we constantly look for is we can accept failures in their prototypes, but we cannot accept insincerity. No, we want them to be sincerely committed to the project, and we monitor them week on week. So that's one. And secondly, good thing about this ecosystem, when the prototype gets on the presentation day, investment partners will come, AMTs and management will come, and most of them get some sort of pre-orders before they leave.
Right. Nice. So that is interesting. This is probably one of the best support that can happen is getting the orders for a startup. The first order is always memorable and cherishable, but really interesting. Dr. Firoz, any programs that CCAMP is handling, any kind of handling?
Yeah, so CCAMP handles the Biotech Ignition Grant, which was set up quite a few years ago, and one of the premier grants for developing a proof of concept. So there, what they are looking for is you walk in with an idea and how you are looking to develop a proof of concept. So this is funding for about 50 lakhs for about 18 months. Then once you develop the proof of concept, you can then go for SIBRI or further grants which are available to take it to the market. There are also other programs called immersion programs, especially the SAIP, the social immersion program, which is focused on things like agriculture and helping the elderly, etc., where you can walk in even before having an idea if you are interested in moving the field forward. So this supports for about 6 months to a year, and it's mostly to for people to go around talking to people, to different people to develop an idea. So apart from that, there are also Karnataka government funded programs like KSAP, which is similar to BIG, but it is focused on companies which are based in Bangalore, Karnataka, not Bangalore. And there are other programs as well. And then if you're at a later stage, there are BC, programs which do come into CCAMP as well. But again, there are a lot of programs available. It's dependent on the technology readiness level that a person is in when they walk in. So I would strongly suggest talking to the people in the funding team, because they'll be able to help you very much with what would fit the mandate and what would be great for the company.
No, good to know. And just like to add, I think even there are various schemes from DST, DBT,
yes.
and BIRAC. There are this BioNest, which is coming up, which is a club of all these 30 plus bio incubators. There is TIH, which is a DST focused program for innovation hubs, which are coming up. So I think system-wise also coming up very well, funding support. Let me now try to summarize what we discussed, just because we are about to hit that time. Because I think what we were told is 3:33. We are just about a minute, and we have a hard stop in 2 minutes. So let me summarize. We don't have Dr. Who joined here. Now let me try and understand. Dr. Prashant gave those. It started with those that there were some gaps as a startup innovator who started up. There were some gaps. He was facing some challenges of finding the right kind of incubator. What should be in the right incubator, he learned through the hard way. But probably the system also learned that they were lacking in providing those support to those startup innovators. And that's how even now the ecosystem, we are able to see that it's not a very rosy picture, but it is definitely something which is to look forward. There is something on the horizon which is brightened up for the Indian medical device ecosystem, that you have support in terms of ecosystem, in terms of the labs which are there, the testing labs, the regulatory side, the IP side, the finance side, the mentorship which is sought from industry or experienced people. I think we are gearing up as a country to have this next phase of startups in medical devices who can create the impact that is envisioned. And probably as a group together, as a country together, we'll be able to create better healthcare services. So really appreciate your inputs. Thank you, Dr. Anand Krishnan. Thank you, Dr. Feroze. And thank you, Dr. Prashant, who joined earlier. So really appreciate your inputs. And I'm sure this is something promising for all the budding innovators who can look at this ecosystem in India and try to benefit from this also. So thank you very much. Look forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Rupesh. Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.